every single one of you. We'd love to know, what part of the world are you watching from right now? Let us know in the comments. Now, let's dive into today's story. The setting sun cast long shadows across Andres Gates's Manhattan penthouse office, painting the white marble floors in shades of amber and gold. The view from the 85th floor showcased the city he'd conquered over 2 decades, transforming inherited wealth into a $2 billion empire through calculated risks and iron determination. At 52, he cut an imposing figure, tall, broad-shouldered, with steel-gray eyes that could strip away pretense with a single glance. Tonight, those eyes were fixed on a small leather-bound book, his 16-year-old daughter's diary. He hadn't meant to read it. Privacy was a principle he respected. But when his head of security, Preston Carter, had placed it on his desk with grave concern, duty overrode principle. "Sir," Preston had said, his usually stoic expression troubled. "You need to see this." Page 47. The spine crackled as Andres opened to the marked page, his daughter Terry's looping handwriting filling the lines. "Mom's boyfriend Jake is so amazing. He totally gets me. Unlike Dad, who's always pushing his stupid rules and expectations. Jake used Dad's credit card to buy me a car today, a cherry red BMW convertible. He just laughed and said, 'Your loser father won't notice.' He doesn't even check his investment accounts that we've been draining. I can't wait for Mom to divorce Dad so Jake can officially be my dad instead." The entry continued, each word a fresh betrayal. "Jake says Dad's too busy with his precious hedge fund to notice anything. He's right. Dad probably wouldn't even care if he knew. All he cares about is his stupid company and his rules. No social media, 4.0 GPA requirement, boring summer internships. Jake says I deserve better. At least Mom understands. She says once the divorce happens, we'll never have to deal with Dad's controlling behavior again." Andres closed the diary, his expression unchanged. 20 years of navigating Wall Street's shark-infested waters had taught him to mask his emotions. He pressed the intercom button on his desk. "Sarah, get me Michael Chun from IT security." Immediately. While waiting, he reviewed the summer internship documents spread across his desk. His daughter's complaints about the mandatory internship suddenly took on new meaning. What he'd seen as teenage rebellion now looked like something far more calculated. Michael Chun appeared within minutes, laptop tucked under his arm. The young IT director had earned his position through brilliant innovation in cybersecurity. "Mr. Gates," Michael began, "I've been monitoring the system access logs as requested. There's been a pattern of unusual activity from Ms. Terry's intern credentials." "Show me." Michael pulled up a series of graphs and charts. Over the past 3 months, her login credentials have accessed areas well beyond the standard intern protocols. Financial records, client portfolios, even some of the offshore account documentation. Our security protocols typically restrict intern access to basic operational data, but someone systematically elevated her permissions through seemingly legitimate requests from HR and the family office. "And you're certain it was Terry accessing these?" "That's the concerning part, sir. The access patterns suggest multiple users, some during school hours when Ms. Terry would be in class. The IP addresses trace back to various locations, including several high-end restaurants and a penthouse in Tribeca." Andres's jaw tightened imperceptibly. The Tribeca penthouse. He'd heard Louise mention it as the new home of one of her charity board members. "Get me everything on that Tribeca location." "And Michael?" Not a word of this to anyone. After Michael left, Andres stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city lights flicker to life. His marriage to Louise Bauer had seemed perfect on paper, old money meeting new, beauty-matching ambition. She'd played the role of devoted wife and mother flawlessly, until recently. The subtle changes had been easy to dismiss. More charity events, separate social circles, declining family dinners. His phone buzzed, a text from Louise. "Working late at the foundation? Don't wait up." A quick check of his security feed showed her Mercedes pulling up to an upscale restaurant in the meatpacking district. The restaurant's reservation system, easily accessed by someone of his influence, showed a table for 2 under the name Jake Russell. Standing there in his office, watching his wife step out of her car to meet her lover, Andres felt no pain, only a cold, calculating anger. He'd built his reputation by destroying competitors who dared to cross him. Now, looking at the diary on his desk and the security feeds on his phone, he realized he'd been ignoring the betrayal brewing in his own home. His intercom buzzed. "Mr. Gates," Sarah's voice came through. "Preston Carter is here with the preliminary background check you requested. Send him in." Preston entered, carrying a thick file. The ex-military man had served as head of security for 5 years, his loyalty proven repeatedly. "Sir, the background on Jake Russell is concerning." Preston laid out several photographs showing Jake with different wealthy families over the past decade. His real name is Daryl Swanson. He's sophisticated, picks his targets carefully, usually families with rebellious teenagers. He uses the kids to gather intelligence while romancing their mothers. Andres examined the photos. Previous successes? 3 attempts. Smaller scales, never more than a few million. Nothing like this. Preston hesitated. "Sir, there's more. We've traced some unusual transfers from your personal accounts. Small amounts at first, growing larger over the past year." "Show me." The financial records revealed a pattern of escalating boldness. 10,000 here, 50,000 there, building up to recent transfers of several $100,000. "The car purchase was their test," Preston explained. "They wanted to see if you'd notice a major unauthorized expense." Andres nodded slowly. "And Louise's charity work?" "Cover for networking with wealthy divorcees who've successfully taken their husbands for millions. She's been building connections, learning from their experiences." "The foundation board members, they're all divorce success stories." The pieces clicked into place. Louise's insistence on Terry's summer internship, her sudden interest in financial literacy, the new social circle, all part of a carefully orchestrated plan. "Your orders, sir." Andres turned back to the window, his reflection hard and determined in the darkened glass. "Monitor everything. Every account, every phone call, every meeting. I want to know who they talk to, where they go, what they spend. But maintain distance. Let them think they're succeeding." "And Miss Terry?" A muscle twitched in Andres's jaw. "My daughter made her choice. She's chosen her side in this war. Treat her accordingly." Preston Carter sat in his security office, surrounded by monitors displaying various camera feeds, data streams, and surveillance reports. The clock showed 3:27 a.m., but sleep was the furthest thing from his mind. He'd been compiling this report for months, watching the pattern emerge with growing concern. His computer pinged, another alert from the tracking system he'd placed on Louise Bauer's Mercedes. The car was leaving the meatpacking district, but not heading home. Instead, it turned toward Brooklyn. "Running a bit late tonight, aren't we?" Preston muttered, typing notes into his report. He pulled up the corresponding surveillance photos, Louise and Jake leaving the restaurant, their intimate body language telling its own story. A knock on his door interrupted his observation. "Enter." Andres Gates stepped in, impeccably dressed despite the hour. "Show me everything, Preston." "From the beginning." Preston nodded, pulling up a timeline on his main screen. "It started 3 years ago. Mrs. Bauer began attending charity events solo while you traveled for business. Initially, nothing suspicious, standard socialite behavior." He clicked through several photos showing Louise at various galas and fundraisers. "Here's where it gets interesting." He highlighted a series of names. She joined specific boards and committees. Every woman on these boards had something in common. They'd all successfully divorced wealthy husbands. Each one specializes in a different aspect of high net worth divorces. The screen displayed profiles of Louise's new inner circle. Patricia Whitmore secured $50 million in her divorce through hidden asset discovery. Sarah Chun, expert in offshore account structures. Victoria Ellis, specialized in leveraging corporate governance for shareholder disputes. Diana Ross, successfully claimed intellectual property rights in her settlement. These women weren't just social connections, Preston explained. They were mentors, each teaching Louise a different aspect of systematic wealth extraction. Andres studied the names, recognizing several from New York social circles. Continue. 8 months ago, Jake Russell enters the picture. Preston pulled up a detailed dossier. Introduced by Miranda Holbrook, one of Louise's new friends. Miranda met him at a charity golf tournament. Or at least, That's the official story. And the unofficial story? Preston's expression hardened. Miranda Holbrook is actually Monica Hayes. She works with Daryl Swanson, our Jake Russell, in an elaborate confidence scheme targeting wealthy families. They've done this before, but never at this scale. He showed Andres several case files. Their usual pattern is to target families with troubled teenagers. The kid provides inside information while Swanson romances the mother. They've attempted this 3 times before, but the largest score was only $2.3 million. Why change their pattern for us? Because of Terry. Preston pulled up surveillance footage from the Gates Fund offices. Your daughter's summer internship gave them unprecedented access. Most wealthy teenagers can't get near their family's financial operations. But Terry? She had legitimate credentials, system access, even a desk in the family office. The footage showed Terry at her desk after hours, photographing documents with her phone while Jake waited in the lobby, ostensibly there to drive her home. Another clip showed Louise giving Terry her security badge, claiming she'd forgotten something in her office. They used your own rules against you, Preston noted. Your insistence on Terry learning the business created their perfect access point. Andres's expression remained neutral, but his eyes hardened. Show me Louise's preparation. Preston brought up a complex flowchart. She's been methodical. First, she established herself on charity boards, building a reputation for financial acumen. Then she gradually gained signing authority on smaller accounts, always with legitimate business justification. He clicked through several documents. Each step was carefully planned. She joined the audit committee of your London office, giving her access to international wire transfers. She volunteered to liaison with major clients, building relationships she could later exploit. She even took certified financial planning courses, creating a paper trail of legitimate expertise. And Jake's role? Patient. Very patient. Preston showed footage of Jake at various charity events. He spent months networking with fund employees, learning protocols, building trust. His charity work provided perfect cover for meeting your wealthy clients. He positioned himself as a philanthropic advisor, gaining intimate knowledge of their finances under the guise of charitable giving strategies. A new alert pinged. Louise's car was heading home. Preston checked the timestamp. She's getting bolder. 3 years ago, she never stayed out past midnight. Now she's regularly out until dawn. Andres watched the Mercedes's progress on the GPS tracker. The car purchase. Tell me about that. Preston pulled up the transaction records. They used your personal credit card, not the business accounts. The dealership records show Jake Russell as the authorized purchaser, using a power of attorney document that appears legitimate but isn't in our records. They wanted to test my attention span, Andres concluded. Exactly. A $75,000 purchase on your personal card. If you didn't notice that, they'd know they could move on to bigger transactions. Another monitor showed Louise's car entering their building's garage. Preston switched to the internal security feed, watching her stumble slightly in her designer heels as she made her way to the private elevator. Sir, Preston hesitated, then continued, there's something else you should see. He pulled up a series of text messages. These are from Terry's phone to Jake. She's not just an unwitting pawn. She's actively helping them. The messages were damning. Dad's in Tokyo next week. Mom says that's our chance to copy his private files. Just got access to the hedge fund's client list. Jake, you were right. There are so many potential targets. Mom's teaching me how to transfer small amounts without triggering alerts. This is way more fun than Dad's boring internship lessons. Andres read the messages in silence, his expression growing colder with each one. Finally, he spoke. You've done well, Preston. I want continuous surveillance on all 3 of them. Every move, every call, every purchase. Already in place, sir. And Preston. Andres turned to leave, then paused. Why did you wait until now to show me the diary? Preston met his boss's gaze steadily. Because 3 months ago, you wouldn't have believed it. You needed to see the pattern yourself, sir. And he hesitated. I needed enough evidence to prove this wasn't just teenage rebellion or marital dissatisfaction. This is a sophisticated criminal enterprise targeting you and your fund. Gilbert Walton's office resembled a war room more than an accountant's workspace. The diminutive forensic accountant had covered his walls with flowcharts and financial diagrams, each telling part of a larger story of betrayal. "It's brilliant." In a twisted way, Gilbert explained to Andres, who stood studying the complex web of transactions. "Mrs. Bauer created a perfect cover through the foundation. Every suspicious transaction has a legitimate charitable explanation." He pointed to one flowchart. "Take this series of transfers. On paper, it's a new charitable initiative supporting women entrepreneurs. In reality, it's a network of shell companies, each controlled by one of Louise's divorcee friends." Andres traced the money flow with his finger. "Show me the progression." Gilbert pulled out 3 years of foundation records. She started small, a few thousand here and there, all properly documented as charitable expenses. Each transaction established precedent for the next. By year 2, she had authorization for 6-figure transfers without additional oversight. The foundation board? Stacked with her allies. Gilbert displayed the board roster. Every new appointment over the past 3 years connects back to her divorce support network. They've created a perfect echo chamber of approval for her financial decisions. Reuben Waters, the IT security expert, entered with fresh reports. "Sir, we've completed our audit of system access patterns. The sophistication is remarkable." He spread out timelines showing login records. They used Terry's summer internship brilliantly. Each week, they'd have her make legitimate requests for additional system access, always related to her assigned projects. Over 3 months, they built up a comprehensive network of permissions. And Louise's role in this? She insisted on overseeing Terry's internship personally, Reuben explained. It gave her perfect cover to expand both their access levels. Any security questions were dismissed as a mother helping her daughter learn the family business. A knock interrupted them. Preston Carter entered with fresh surveillance photos. "Sir, we've identified their meeting patterns. Louise attends charity events 3 nights a week. Jake appears at 2/3 of them. They're careful, never arriving together, always maintaining plausible deniability. The Tribeca penthouse? Registered to one of their shell companies. They've used it for meetings with potential targets, wealthy clients they've identified through the fund's records." Gilbert pulled up another financial summary. "They've been testing boundaries systematically. The car purchase wasn't their first move. It was just their first visible one. They've been making smaller withdrawals for months, each one carefully disguised as legitimate expenses." "Through what channels?" Andres asked. "Primarily the foundation," Gilbert explained. "Louise established herself as a respected voice in philanthropic circles. She gives speeches about financial empowerment, writes articles about wealth management. On paper, she looks like a financial expert in her own right." Reuben added, "They've been gathering intelligence through multiple channels. Terry's access to internal systems, Louise's social connections, Jake's charity work. Each piece carefully coordinated." Preston laid out surveillance photos showing Jake meeting with various fund employees. "He's been patient, building relationships across your organization. Middle managers, IT staff, even cleaning crews, anyone who might have useful information or access." Andres studied the evidence in silence. 3 years of preparation, 8 months of active operations. His wife, his daughter, and a professional con man, all working together to dismantle his empire. "Next steps, sir?" Preston asked. Andres turned to the window, watching the city below. Louise's Mercedes was pulling up to the foundation office, right on schedule. She stepped out, immaculate in designer clothes bought with his money, heading to another day of plotting his destruction. "Continue monitoring," he ordered. "Every call, every meeting, every transaction. I want to know everything they do, everyone they talk to." His reflection in the glass showed no emotion, only cold determination. Let them think their plan is working. Let them grow confident. As his team dispersed, Andres remained at the window. Below, Louise greeted board members arriving for their morning meeting, her smile radiating false warmth. She'd perfected her role, the accomplished philanthropist, the devoted mother, the wronged wife preparing her escape. "Sir," Preston spoke from the doorway, "there's one more thing you should see." He handed Andres a final surveillance photo. It showed Louise, Jake, and Terry at dinner the previous night, all three laughing over some shared joke. They looked like a perfect family, exactly the image they wanted to project. They're planning something bigger, Preston warned. The car purchase was just the beginning. Andres placed the photo on his desk, next to Terry's diary. 3 years of preparation had brought them to this point. His wife had built her network, gained her credentials, and positioned her allies. His daughter had been turned against him, transformed from an unwilling intern into an eager accomplice. And Jake, or Daryl, had orchestrated it all, patient and calculating. They thought they were playing the long game, that their careful preparation had given them the advantage, that Andres Gates, the ruthless hedge fund titan, was too absorbed in his empire to notice their schemes. "Sir?" Gilbert asked hesitantly. "Should we begin preparing?" "No." Andres cut him off. "For now, we watch. We document. We let them think they're succeeding." He turned from the window, his expression carved from stone. "They want to play games with my empire? Fine. Let's see how well they play when they don't know they've already lost." The sun climbed higher over Manhattan, casting long shadows through the office windows. Below, Louise entered the foundation building, carrying her designer briefcase filled with documents meant to destroy him. In her wake, Jake's black Porsche pulled into a nearby parking space, right on schedule for their daily charitable planning meeting. They had worked so hard to hide their intentions, never realizing that their very attempts at secrecy had revealed everything. Now, watching them move through their choreographed deception, Andres felt only cold satisfaction. Let them plot. Let them scheme. Let them think they were the architects of his destruction. They would learn, as all his enemies learned, that underestimating Andres Gates was a fatal mistake. The morning sun had barely touched Manhattan's skyline when Andres Gates assembled his response team in the secure conference room of his private office suite. The space, designed for high-stakes merger negotiations, now served as the command center for a different kind of takeover. Preston Carter stood at the head of the conference table, presenting surveillance footage on multiple screens. To his right, Julius Driscoll reviewed legal documents with sharp, practiced eyes. Gilbert Walton, the forensic accountant, had transformed one wall into a complex financial flowchart. Reuben Waters, hunched over 3 laptops, monitored real-time communications. "Gentlemen," Andres addressed his team, his voice carrying the same authority that had built a $2 billion empire. "Show me what we've uncovered." Gilbert stepped forward first, laser pointer tracking through his financial web. Mrs. Bauer's diversion of funds was systematic. Starting 3 years ago, she established a network of shell companies, each with legitimate-appearing charitable purposes. He highlighted a series of transactions. The pattern is sophisticated. She used her foundation role to create multiple layers of separation. Money flows from the fund through various charitable initiatives, eventually landing in accounts they control. "Total amount?" Andres asked, his expression unchanged. "Nearly $40 million over 3 years. The amounts increased as they grew bolder. Last quarter alone saw $12 million in diversions." Gilbert pulled up a new chart. They used multiple methods: fake consultant fees, inflated vendor contracts, fraudulent grant distributions. Reuben interrupted, his screens flashing with new data. "Sir, I've cracked their encrypted communication channel. You need to see this." The team gathered around his station as messages scrolled across the screen. "Jake, the old man's completely clueless. Keep pushing those trading recommendations to his clients." "Louise, already done. 3 more signed up for our special investment opportunity yesterday." "Jake, perfect. Once we've gathered enough client funds, we'll trigger the collapse. Gates won't know what hit him." "Louise, what about Terry?" "Jake, she's our best asset. Keep having her access those system files. Her daddy's precious internship program is our golden ticket." Andres's jaw tightened imperceptibly. "Show me the client list." Preston pulled up another screen. "They've targeted your top 20 clients, sir. Jake's been using his charity connections to arrange private meetings. He presents himself as an independent wealth advisor, recommending specific investments that funnel money through their shell companies. The sophistication of their operation is remarkable," Julius noted, spreading out legal documents. Every transaction has a paper trail that appears legitimate. Louise's gradual accumulation of signing authority created a perfect cover. Gilbert highlighted another section of his flowchart. They've been particularly clever with the Foundation's international grants. Money moves through multiple jurisdictions, making it harder to trace. Each transfer has supporting documentation, fake but convincing studies, research reports, impact assessments. And Terry's role? Andres asked. Ruben pulled up system logs. They've been using her access permissions brilliantly. Her summer internship credentials accessed critical systems during business hours. Nothing suspicious there. But after hours, those same credentials accessed sensitive files from remote locations. Preston added surveillance photos to the evidence wall. Jake coached her on what to look for. Here's footage from the fund's lobby. See how he's pointing out specific documents on her screen? He turned your daughter into their unwitting spy. Not entirely unwitting, Julius corrected, presenting printed text messages. These show she understood she was helping them gather intelligence. Her resentment of your strict rules made her an easy target for manipulation. The team worked through the morning, piecing together the full scope of the betrayal. Louise's careful preparation, Jake's patient manipulation, Terry's willing participation, all orchestrated to destroy the empire Andres had built. Sir, Preston said quietly, there's something else you should see. He played security footage from Terry's last visit to the office. The teenage girl sat at her intern desk, photographing confidential documents while Jake waited in the lobby. Sending you the good stuff. Her text message to Jake read, Dad's going to freak when he realizes his precious heir helped take him down. Andres watched the footage in silence, his expression carved from stone. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the cold precision that had made him legendary on Wall Street. Compile everything. Every transaction, every communication, every breach of trust. I want a complete record of their betrayal. He turned to his team. They think they're destroying my empire? Let's show them exactly who they're dealing with. The team dispersed to their tasks, each understanding the gravity of their mission. Through the windows, Manhattan's financial district hummed with activity, unaware that one of its most powerful players was preparing for war. Judge Nelson Mitchell's chambers offered a stark contrast to the modern glass and steel of Manhattan's financial district. Darkwood paneling and leather-bound law books created an atmosphere of gravitas as he reviewed the evidence presented by Julius Driscoll. This goes far beyond family court, the judge stated, his experienced eyes scanning complex financial documents. We're looking at federal securities fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy charges. The scope is extraordinary. Julius nodded, presenting another file. Their pattern becomes clear when you examine previous cases. Jake Russell, or rather, Daryl Swanson, has attempted similar schemes before. He targets wealthy families with rebellious teenagers, using the children to gather intelligence while romancing their mothers. But never at this scale, Judge Mitchell observed. No, Your Honor. Previous attempts were limited to a few $1 million. This operation, Julius spread out financial records across the judge's desk. They've diverted nearly $40 million through a sophisticated network of shell companies. More importantly, they've compromised client accounts at one of the country's largest hedge funds. The judge leaned back, considering the implications. Walk me through their methodology. Julius pulled out a timeline. 3 years ago, Louise Bauer began positioning herself in the charitable world. She joined specific boards, all connected to wealthy divorcees who'd successfully extracted massive settlements from their husbands. Each connection provided expertise in different aspects of high-net-worth divorce strategy. And the daughter? A crucial component. They used Terry's mandatory summer internship to gain access to internal systems. Her credentials accessed confidential files, client portfolios, trading records, all under the guise of learning the family business. A knock interrupted them. Andres Gates entered, his presence commanding attention without effort. Your Honor. Judge Mitchell gestured to a chair. Mr. Gates, I've been reviewing the evidence. This is unprecedented. Indeed. Andres's voice carried no emotion. They've compromised not just my personal assets, but my client's investments as well. Show him the client list, Julius. The attorney presented another document. Jake Russell has been targeting the fund's wealthiest clients, using charitable events as cover for private meetings. He recommends specific investments, all designed to funnel money through their control. How did they gain such deep access? The judge asked. Louise spent years building legitimacy, Julius explained. She took financial courses, wrote articles about wealth management, spoke at conferences. Meanwhile, Jake cultivated relationships with fund employees, learning our protocols and security measures. And now, they're preparing their endgame, Andre stated. The car purchase was their test run, seeing if I'd notice a major unauthorized expense. When I didn't react, they accelerated their plans. Judge Mitchell studied the evidence with growing concern. Surveillance photos showed Jake meeting with wealthy clients. Financial records revealed the complex web of transactions. Text messages demonstrated the calculated nature of their betrayal. Your daughter's involvement complicates matters, the judge noted. Terry made her choice, Andres replied, his tone final. She's not an innocent pawn. The evidence shows she understood exactly what she was doing. Julius presented more documents. We've traced their communication patterns. Jake coached her on what information to gather, which systems to access. She provided intelligence willingly, motivated by teenage rebellion and Jake's manipulation. A clerk entered with urgent papers. Judge Mitchell reviewed them quickly, his expression grave. The SEC has opened a preliminary inquiry based on irregular trading patterns in several client accounts. Exactly as we anticipated, Julius noted. Jake's investment recommendations to our clients have created a pattern of suspicious activity that attracts regulatory attention. Andre stood, looking out the chamber windows at the city below. They think they're playing a sophisticated game, using my daughter's access, my wife's connections, my client's trust, all to dismantle what I've built. What are you proposing? Judge Mitchell asked. A coordinated response, Julius answered, presenting a detailed brief. We've documented every transaction, every communication, every breach of trust. The evidence supports criminal charges far beyond simple divorce proceedings. The judge reviewed the brief carefully. This would require careful timing. Multiple agencies, jurisdictions, already arranged, Andre stated. My team has been building this case methodically. Every detail documented, every move prepared. They won't see it coming, Julius added. They think they're orchestrating a simple high-net-worth divorce with some financial fraud on the side. They have no idea we've uncovered the full scope of their operation. Judge Mitchell nodded slowly, signing several documents. Proceed with your strategy, gentlemen. But be prepared. Cases like this often reveal unexpected complications. Let them come, Andres replied, his voice carrying absolute certainty. They chose to attack my empire. Now they'll learn exactly what that means. As they left the judge's chambers, Julius reviewed their next steps. The legal machinery was in motion, each component carefully calibrated for maximum impact. Sir, Julius hesitated. Louise's attorney has requested a meeting. They're probably preparing their divorce strategy. Let them prepare, Andres answered, his expression unchanged. They think they're playing chess. They haven't realized yet that the game is already over. The trap was elaborate but patient, like a spider's web built with surgical precision. Andres Gates sat in his office, watching multiple screens track the key players in this final act. Everything was positioned perfectly, waiting only for the targets to make their predicted moves. Sir, Preston's voice came through the intercom. Jake Russell just pulled into the garage. He's taking Terry for their weekly father-daughter joy ride. Andres allowed himself a cold smile. They'd known this would come, Jake's predictable attempt to manipulate his daughter through orchestrated bonding moments. The black Porsche had become a symbol of Jake's supposed superiority, his way of showing Terry the glamorous life her boring father could never provide. Teams in position, FBI units standing by at all exit points, SEC investigators ready to move on the trading floor. Local police coordinated for the foundation office. Everything had been prepared meticulously. Over the past weeks, Andres had moved assets strategically, using legitimate business deals as cover. Meanwhile, Preston had coordinated with federal agents who'd been building their own case against Jake for previous frauds. Gilbert's voice came through another channel. Financial containment ready, sir. All suspicious accounts flagged and monitored. Transfer protocols in place. Mrs. Bauer's location? Andres asked. At the foundation, Ruben reported. She's meeting with the board, presenting their new strategic initiative. Actually, their final push to transfer major assets. The screen showed Louise at the head of the foundation's conference table, elegant and poised as she presented PowerPoint slides detailing what appeared to be legitimate charitable projects. Her audience, wealthy donors and board members, had no idea they were watching a sophisticated fraud in action. Terry's status? Just entered the Porsche, Preston confirmed. Jake's taking his usual route toward the highway. Julius joined Andres in the office, legal documents in hand. Everything's ready, sir. Judge Mitchell signed the final orders this morning. The moment Jake takes Terry across state lines in that car, federal jurisdiction triggers automatically. Andres finished. And the Porsche itself? Documented as purchased with fraudulent funds. The FBI can seize it as evidence the moment they move. The pieces were in place. 3 years of Louise's careful preparation, 8 months of Jake's patient manipulation, and Terry's willing betrayal, all about to unravel in a single coordinated strike. Sir, Preston interrupted. Mrs. Bauer just received a text from Jake. She's leaving the foundation meeting early. On screen, Louise made smooth excuses to her board, gathering her designer briefcase, the one containing evidence of years of systematic fraud. She had no idea that every document inside had been cataloged, every transaction traced, every communication monitored. Let her think she's escaping, Andres commanded. Maintain surveillance, but don't intervene. The trap had been designed with psychological precision. Let them feel safe. Let them think their plans were succeeding. Let them take those final, irrevocable steps that would seal their fate. Jake's approaching the state line, Preston reported. Terry's still texting from the passenger seat. Latest message. Mom, you won't believe how mad Dad's going to be when he finds out about the car. Andres checked his watch. Execute. The response was immediate and overwhelming. FBI vehicles appeared around Jake's Porsche, boxing it in with professional precision. At the foundation office, SEC agents presented warrants and began securing files. Police units moved to intercept Louise before she could reach her escape route. Status? Andres demanded. Jake and Terry in custody, Preston confirmed. He tried arguing about taking his stepdaughter for a drive, but the FBI had documentation of every fraud. The Porsche is already being impounded. Mrs. Bauer? Arrested while attempting to delete files from her foundation computer. Every device seized, all accounts frozen. The screen showed the operation unfolding with military precision. Louise's carefully cultivated social network watched in shock as she was led out in handcuffs. Jake's charity connections stared as federal agents carried boxes of evidence from his office. Terry's private school classmates filmed with their phones as she sat in the back of an FBI vehicle, her dreams of escape shattered. Sir, Julius entered with fresh reports. The evidence is overwhelming. Louise's 3 years of preparation provided clear proof of premeditation. Jake's sophisticated operation adds to his prior convictions. And Terry, her role is documented, Andres stated flatly. Every system breach, every photographed document, every willing participation in their schemes. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the office windows as Andres watched his family's betrayal reach its inevitable conclusion. They had thought themselves clever, patient, sophisticated. They never realized they were merely players in a game whose rules he had mastered long ago. Your orders, sir? Preston asked. Execute the rest of the protocol. Every account frozen, every asset secured, every connection severed. Andres turned from the windows, his expression showing the same ruthless determination that had built his empire. They chose to play this game. Now they'll learn the cost of losing. As his team coordinated the final steps, Andres retrieved Terry's diary from his desk, the document that had first revealed their betrayal. Soon it would join the mountain of evidence demonstrating their crimes. But for now, it served as a reminder. In the world of high finance, as in family, trust must be earned. And betrayal? Betrayal carried consequences that no amount of clever planning could escape. The news broke like a thunderclap across Wall Street. Hedge fund family fraud scheme exposed. Gates empire targeted in $40 million conspiracy. The Wall Street Journal's headline dominated screens across the financial district, sending shockwaves through New York's elite social circles. In the federal courthouse's high-security courtroom, Louise Bauer's perfectly manicured facade finally cracked. Her designer suit couldn't mask the trembling in her hands as Judge Mitchell read the charges. The evidence of premeditation is extensive, the judge stated, his voice carrying through the packed courtroom. 3 years of systematic preparation, documented through financial records, email communications, and witness testimony. U.S. Attorney Rachel Hammond approached the podium, her presentation clinical and devastating. Your Honor, the defendant's actions show clear intent. Mrs. Bauer didn't stumble into this fraud. She architected it. The timeline proves methodical planning. The prosecutor displayed a series of documents on the courtroom screens. Beginning 3 years ago, the defendant strategically positioned herself on charitable boards, each move calculated to gain financial access. She manipulated her own daughter's internship program to compromise security systems. This wasn't desperation, this was design. Louise's attorney attempted to intervene. Your Honor, my client was influenced by Mr. Swanson's sophisticated. Actually, Louise interrupted, her mask of gentility slipping to reveal raw arrogance. I planned this long before Jake. He just provided additional expertise. She turned toward where Andres sat, her expression twisted with spite. You thought I'd just keep playing the perfect corporate wife? Standing in your shadow while you controlled everything? The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Her own attorney looked stricken at this admission of premeditation. In the row behind the prosecution, Preston Carter leaned toward Julius Driscoll. She's actually proud of it, he muttered. 3 years of planning, destroying her own family, and she sees it as some kind of achievement. Jake Russell, or Daryl Swanson, sat at a separate defense table, his usual smooth confidence replaced by barely contained rage. His previous convictions had been entered into evidence, each failed scheme revealing a pattern that culminated in this ambitious attack on the Gates fortune. Mr. Swanson, Judge Mitchell addressed the male defendant. Your prior convictions demonstrate a pattern of targeting wealthy families through their children. However, the scale of this operation far exceeds your previous attempts. Because they were practice runs, Jake sneered, his charm evaporating in the face of defeat. Gates here thinks he's untouchable with his billions and his rules. We just gave his princess what she wanted, freedom from daddy's control. Andres remained impassive, his expression carved from stone as his wife and her lover revealed their true natures. The carefully crafted masks of caring mother and supportive mentor had fallen away, leaving naked ambition and spite exposed. The evidence mounted throughout the day. Financial records showed Louise's gradual accumulation of power through seemingly legitimate channels. Security footage captured Jake coaching Terry to access restricted systems. Email trails documented their coordinated manipulation of fund clients. Regarding the minor defendant, Judge Mitchell turned to address Terry's situation. The teenager sat with child services representatives, her private school uniform replaced by conservative attire that couldn't hide her sullen defiance. While Ms. Gates's age precludes criminal charges, her actions have consequences, the judge continued. The evidence shows willing participation in defrauding her father's clients. Her role in compromising fund security violated multiple agreements. The private school's ethics committee had submitted their own documentation. Text messages showed Terry bragging to classmates about helping Jake target their parents' investments. Security cameras caught her photographing confidential documents while making jokes about ruining her father's reputation. I was just trying to help Mom be happy. Terry burst out, her teenage bravado cracking. Dad never let me do anything normal. It was always about his stupid rules and his precious company. That's right, sweetheart, Louise called out, earning a sharp reprimand from the judge. Your father's control issues drove us to this. We were claiming our independence. Independence? The word cut through the courtroom as Andres finally spoke, his voice carrying the same authority that commanded boardrooms. You orchestrated a sophisticated financial fraud, manipulated my daughter, targeted my clients. Don't dress up greed as liberation. The afternoon brought expert testimony on the scheme's sophistication. Forensic accountants detailed the complex network of shell companies. IT specialists explained how Louise and Jake had systematically elevated their access to fund systems. Former charity board members revealed how they'd been manipulated into providing legitimacy for fraudulent transactions. The foundation activities alone show remarkable premeditation, Rachel Hammond demonstrated. Mrs. Bauer created an elaborate framework of legitimate-appearing charitable initiatives, each designed to conceal fraudulent transfers. She displayed a chart tracking the steady increase in diverted funds. As their confidence grew, so did their ambition. Louise's mask cracked further as the evidence mounted. "You think I wanted to keep playing the perfect wife?" she spat at Andres. "Everything had to be your way. Our daughter's education, our social circle, even my charity work had to serve your image. The charity work that you turned into a fraud mechanism?" Judge Mitchell interrupted. "The evidence suggests you viewed every aspect of your marriage as an opportunity for financial exploitation." Jake's testimony revealed additional layers of calculation. He detailed how they'd selected their targets, using Terry's resentment and Louise's social connections to gather intelligence. His previous schemes had taught him how to manipulate family dynamics, but the Gates operation represented his masterpiece. "Gates thought he was so clever with his security protocols," Jake sneered. But he never realized his biggest vulnerability was right there at the dinner table. His perfect little family, plotting his destruction over breakfast. The judge's final summary was devastating. The evidence demonstrates a level of premeditation that exceeds typical financial fraud. Mrs. Bauer spent 3 years systematically positioning herself to attack her husband's assets. Mr. Swanson brought sophisticated criminal expertise to escalate their scheme. Together, they manipulated a minor child into betraying her father and compromising client security. As federal marshals led Louise and Jake away, their true characters were fully exposed. No more pretense of the sophisticated socialite or charming mentor. Just two grifters whose ambition had finally exceeded their grasp. Andres watched them go, his expression unchanged. He'd built his empire by recognizing threats and eliminating them without mercy. His own family had thought that made him cold, unfeeling. They never understood that his strength came from seeing reality clearly, without emotional illusion. The headlines would run for weeks. Socialite's 3-year plot to destroy hedge fund empire. Teen heiress manipulated in family fraud scheme. Charitable foundation revealed as massive fraud operation. But in that courtroom, watching his wife and her lover led away in handcuffs while his daughter faced the consequences of her choices, Andres Gates showed no satisfaction, no pain, no regret. He had eliminated a threat to his empire, nothing more. The fact that the threat came from his own family simply proved his long-held belief. Trust must be earned, and betrayal must be punished. 1 year after the arrests, Andres Gates sat in his expanded office suite, reviewing reports of his fund's record growth. The wall of windows offered the same commanding view of Manhattan, but the office itself had been completely redesigned. No trace remained of the space where he'd first discovered his family's betrayal. A knock at the door preceded Preston Carter's entrance. "Sir, the latest updates on our former security risks." Andres nodded for him to continue, his attention still partially focused on the market data streaming across his screens. "Louise's social network has completely collapsed," Preston reported. "Her carefully cultivated connections want nothing to do with her now. The evidence of her long-term deception was too damaging. None of them can risk association with her schemes." The Foundation board members? Most have become prosecution witnesses, eager to distance themselves. They're providing detailed testimony about how she manipulated charitable operations for personal gain. Her reputation in philanthropic circles is destroyed. Andres allowed himself a small smile. Louise had spent years building her social empire, positioning herself as a respected voice in New York society. Now those same connections were rushing to testify against her, desperate to prove they were victims rather than accomplices. Jake's charity contacts? All cooperating with investigators. His previous victims have come forward, revealing similar patterns of manipulation. The FBI is using his methodology as a case study in affinity fraud. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Gates," his new assistant's voice came through. Ms. O'Donnell from Sterling and Walsh is here for your meeting. Send her in. Cecilia O'Donnell entered, carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than most cars. At 45, she commanded attention through competence rather than manipulation. Her reputation as one of Wall Street's sharpest legal minds had been earned through intelligence and ruthless precision. The settlement negotiations are proceeding as expected, she reported, taking a seat. Louise's attempts to claim marital assets have been systematically dismantled. The evidence of criminal intent negates any claim to legitimate earnings. And her latest request? For a meeting before her sentencing, Cecilia's expression showed professional distaste. She's trying to play on past connections, but it's transparent manipulation. Her lawyer suggests she might offer information about additional conspirators in exchange for considerations. Deny it, Andres stated flatly. We already have everything we need. Preston cleared his throat. Sir, there's also an update about Ms. Terry. Her private school's ethics committee reviewed the evidence of her participation in defrauding other students' families. The expulsion is final. Andres showed no reaction. His daughter had made her choices, siding with criminals who manipulated her teenage rebellion into a weapon against her own father. She's been writing letters, Preston added carefully. One arrives each month, always with the same Park Avenue return address. Return them unopened, Andres instructed. The same protocol as always. Cecilia reviewed another document. The broader impact on your operation has been surprisingly positive. Your decisive response to the internal threat has strengthened client confidence. The fund's assets under management have increased 20% since the arrests. The market respects strength, Andres observed. Show weakness to betrayal, you invite more attacks. A junior analyst appeared at the door with urgent reports. The market was moving, opportunities emerging. Andres Gates's reputation for seizing advantages had only grown stronger since he'd proven his ability to eliminate threats from any quarter, even his own family. One more thing, Preston added as they prepared to leave. Louise's lawyer made an interesting comment during deposition. Said she kept insisting, I just needed my own identity. Apparently, that's her justification for everything. Andres's expression didn't change. She chose her identity. Now she can live with it. Later that afternoon, Andres stood at his office windows, watching the city he'd conquered twice, first through financial genius, then by defeating those who thought to use his own family against him. His empire had emerged stronger, his reputation more fearsome. The sun cast long shadows across Manhattan's towers as another day of victory drew to a close. Below, the streets teemed with people rushing home to their families, unknowing that they passed beneath the office of a man who'd proven family was no shield against consequences. Louise's social circle had scattered like leaves in a storm, her former friends becoming eager witnesses. Jake's charity connections had turned against him, his sophisticated scheme becoming a cautionary tale in financial fraud. And Terry, she'd chosen her path, siding with criminals who promised freedom while binding her in betrayal. Andres Gates had built his first fortune through ruthless strategic brilliance. He preserved it by recognizing that loyalty transcended blood. Now he would build something new, something stronger, forged in the fire of betrayal and tempered by unwavering principle. The markets awaited, opportunities emerging in the chaos of lesser men's failures. There would be other battles, other victories. But none would doubt again that crossing Andres Gates carried consequences, no matter how close the connection. 5 years passed, marked by the steady growth of the Gates financial empire. The fund's assets had grown to $5 billion, each success built on the foundation of absolute integrity and ruthless competence. The betrayal that might have destroyed a lesser man had only proved Andres Gates's fundamental principle. Trust must be earned, and loyalty mattered more than blood. The corner office had expanded again, now occupying the entire top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city Andres Gates continued to conquer. But the most significant change sat across from his desk, Cecilia O'Donnell, no longer just his attorney but his wife and partner. The Singapore expansion is proceeding ahead of schedule, she reported, her sharp legal mind having proved equally adept at strategic growth. The new compliance protocols you implemented are being praised as industry standards. Andres nodded, reviewing the reports. After uncovering his family's betrayal, he'd rebuilt his organization with additional layers of security. No one person, no matter their position or relation, could ever again gain enough access to threaten the whole. The trust fund conversion is complete, Cecilia continued. All proceeds now fund scholarships for children of fraud victims. The foundation board approved it unanimously. A touch of irony there. The money that might have been Terry's inheritance now helped families targeted by schemes like the one she'd helped execute. Her monthly letters still arrived like clockwork, each returned unopened. The Park Avenue return address hadn't changed, but nothing inside could change what she'd chosen. Preston Carter appeared at the door. "Sir, the latest security review is complete. All systems updated, all protocols enhanced." He'd been promoted to Chief of Global Security, his loyalty during the crisis rewarded with greater responsibility. Also, there's been another development regarding Mr. Swanson. Jake Russell, or Daryl Swanson, faced decades in maximum security. His sophisticated scheme had become a case study in financial fraud, taught at law enforcement academies as an example of how family connections could be weaponized for criminal gain. "He's attempted to negotiate again," Preston reported, offered to reveal details about other operations in exchange for consideration. His lawyer claims he has information about additional conspirators. "Deny it," Andres stated flatly. "Let him serve his time." Louise had fared little better. Her minimum security facility might offer more comfort than Jake's prison, but her carefully constructed social world had crumbled completely. Her former friends had testified eagerly against her, each revelation of her deception destroying another carefully cultivated connection. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Gates, the new interns are here for orientation. Send them up." A group of young faces entered, eager and nervous. The intern program had been completely redesigned, now focusing on identifying and nurturing genuine talent rather than accommodating family connections. Each candidate was selected through blind evaluation, judged purely on merit and potential. "Welcome to Gates Fund Management," Andres addressed them, his voice carrying the authority that had only grown stronger through crisis. "You're here because you've earned the opportunity. What you do with it depends entirely on your choices." The lesson of merit over privilege had been expensive but valuable. These interns would learn that success came through competence and loyalty, not manipulation and betrayal. Later, as the sun set over Manhattan, Andres and Cecilia reviewed the day's victories. The markets had moved as predicted, opportunities seized with precise timing. The fund's reputation for excellence had never been stronger. "The annual Fraud Prevention Endowment is ready for distribution," Cecilia noted. "The research projects show promising results." Another irony, every year, Andres funded new initiatives to study and prevent financial fraud. The endowment served as both practical protection and fitting memorial to the family he'd lost to greed. The Singapore team asked about implementation timelines. She continued, "They're eager to prove themselves. They'll have their chance," Andres replied. Trust is earned through action, not promises. The truth he'd always known, that his family had failed to understand. Real strength came from facing reality without illusion. Love without accountability was weakness. Trust without verification invited betrayal. Family meant nothing without loyalty. Night fell over the city, lights twinkling like stars fallen to earth. Somewhere in that glittering landscape, Louise served her sentence, her social connections worthless. Jake faced decades more in prison, his sophisticated schemes reduced to cautionary tales. And Terry, she'd chosen her path, siding with criminals who'd manipulated her teenage rebellion into a weapon against her own future. But here, in this office high above Manhattan's endless ambitions, Andres Gates had rebuilt something stronger than what betrayal had threatened. His new wife brought her own wealth and sharp legal mind to their partnership. The fund had grown beyond what mere greed could threaten. Success, he'd proven, came not from trust freely given, but from loyalty rightfully earned. The markets never slept, opportunities emerging in the darkness of lesser men's failures. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles, new victories. But the lessons remained constant. Trust required vigilance, family wasn't about blood but loyalty, and some betrayals marked permanent endings. Preston entered with the final security reports for the day. "Sir, there's one more item you should see." He placed a familiar cream-colored envelope on the desk, Terry's monthly letter, right on schedule. Without a word, Andres stamped it, returned to sender, and handed it back. 5 years of monthly letters, each returned unopened. Some choices couldn't be unmade. Some bridges couldn't be rebuilt. "The new compliance protocols are generating interest," Cecilia noted, changing the subject smoothly. "3 other firms have inquired about licensing our security framework." Andres nodded. His response to betrayal had transformed industry standards. The Gates Protocol, they called it, a systematic approach to preventing internal fraud through layered verification and earned authority. "The Fraud Prevention Scholarship awarded 68 grants this year," she continued. One recipient's thesis specifically studied how family businesses can protect against internal exploitation. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. The money that might have been Terry's inheritance now funded research to prevent scenarios like the one she'd helped create. Every year, new students learned from his family's betrayal, turning personal tragedy into professional wisdom. Night settled fully over Manhattan, the city's lights burning like countless stars. Somewhere in that glittering landscape, his former family served their various sentences: Louise in her minimum security cage of regret, Jake in his maximum security monument to overreach, Terry in her self-imposed exile of consequences. But here, in this office that crowned his rebuilt empire, Andres Gates had proven that true strength came from principle rather than sentiment. Every betrayal had been answered, every weakness eliminated, every threat transformed into a foundation for greater success. The night ahead held new opportunities, new challenges to conquer. Tomorrow would bring fresh battles, different victories. But the core truth remained unchanged. In business as in life, trust must be earned through action, loyalty proven through choice, and weakness eliminated without hesitation. Andres Gates turned back to his screens, where markets moved in endless patterns of opportunity and risk. He'd built his first fortune through strategic brilliance, preserved it through ruthless determination, and rebuilt it stronger through unwavering principle. The lessons were carved in stone. Success required vigilance, family meant loyalty, and some betrayals marked endings that no amount of time could change. These truths had cost him a fortune to learn, but they'd earned him an empire to keep. His new family, built on shared strength rather than accident of birth, stood ready for whatever challenges emerged. The markets awaited, opportunities calling, and Andres Gates, as always, moved forward without regret, without weakness, without illusion. The night deepened over Manhattan, but in his office, high above the city's endless ambitions, Andres Gates continued his relentless pursuit of excellence. The past was settled, its lessons learned. The future belonged to those who understood that true strength came not from trust freely given, but from loyalty rightfully earned. Epilogue. 10 years later. The Wall Street Journal's 10th anniversary retrospective landed on Andres Gates's desk early one morning, decade after Gates' family fraud. How one betrayal revolutionized financial security. At 62, Andres had transformed his original $2 billion hedge fund into a $15 billion global financial empire. The betrayal that might have destroyed him had instead catalyzed unprecedented growth. From his expanded office suite, now occupying the top 3 floors of the Gates Financial Tower, he could see the Manhattan skyline he'd reshaped. The Gates Protocol, his systematic approach to preventing internal fraud, had become the industry standard, licensed to over 200 financial institutions worldwide. The latest reports just came in, Cecilia O'Donnell Gates announced, entering with her characteristic precision. 7 years into their marriage, their partnership had proven as formidable in business as in life. Her legal brilliance combined with his strategic genius had created an unstoppable force in global finance. Louise's latest appeal was denied. She continued, settling into one of the leather chairs. The parole board found her continued attempts to justify her actions demonstrated a lack of genuine remorse. 9 years into her 12-year sentence at FCI Danbury, Louise Bauer had watched her carefully constructed world crumble completely. Her minimum security prison might offer more comfort than standard facilities, but the former socialite had discovered that designer privileges meant nothing in a 6x8 cell. Preston Carter, now global head of security for Gates Enterprises, appeared with his morning briefing. "The prison reports make interesting reading," he noted, pulling up details on his tablet. "She still tries to network with new inmates from wealthy backgrounds, but her reputation precedes her. No one wants association with the woman who became a case study in familial betrayal." "Her former social circle?" Andres inquired, though he already knew the answer. "Completely dissolved," Preston confirmed. "Most of them testify at fraud prevention seminars now, describing how she manipulated charitable connections for criminal gain. Her name has become synonymous with social climbing exploitation." Cecilia pulled up additional reports. "Her last visitor was 3 months ago, Miranda Holbrook, or rather, Monica Hayes. Apparently, it didn't go well. Hayes is now a guest lecturer for the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, using Louise's case to demonstrate how social networks can be weaponized for fraud." The quarterly report from Maximum Security told an even grimmer story about Jake Russell, or Daryl Swanson. 15 years into his 25-year sentence, the former con man had lost everything that once made him dangerous. His smooth charm had crumbled under the weight of prison routine, his sophisticated schemes reduced to cautionary tales for law enforcement training. Swanson tried writing a book, Preston mentioned, claimed he'd reveal the true story behind the Gates scandal. Every publisher rejected it. Seems no one wants to amplify the voice of a man who manipulated a teenage girl to defraud her own father. A familiar cream-colored envelope sat unopened on Andres's desk. Another monthly letter from Terry, still bearing the same Park Avenue return address. 10 years of letters, each returned unopened. At 26, his daughter had carved out a life in the shadow of her teenage choices. The Trust Fund Scholarship Program awarded its 1,000th grant this year. Cecilia reported, changing the subject. The Gates Foundation for Fraud Prevention has become the leading funding source for research in financial security and family business protection. The foundation occupied its own tower now, its mission transformed from Louise's vehicle for fraud into a global leader in financial crime prevention. The annual symposium drew experts from around the world, each studying different aspects of how trust could be weaponized by those closest to you. The Singapore expansion exceeded projections again, she continued. Their Asian headquarters had grown into a $3 billion operation, built on the principles of earned trust and verified loyalty that had emerged from the betrayal. Julius Driscoll, semi-retired but still serving as senior legal counsel, entered with fresh documents. At 75, he'd seen the Gates empire rise, survive betrayal, and emerge stronger. The Gates Protocol licensing agreements generated another record quarter, he reported. "Every major financial institution now requires our verification systems." Gilbert Walton's forensic accounting firm, now a subsidiary of Gates Enterprises, had revolutionized fraud detection. His team had transformed the painful lessons of Louise's betrayal into sophisticated algorithms for identifying internal threats. "The latest analysis of Louise's methods is being published next month," Gilbert added, joining the morning briefing. Harvard Business Review is featuring it in their series on organizational trust and betrayal. Reuben Waters, who tracked the original electronic evidence of their scheme, had built the IT security division into a global powerhouse. "The 10th-generation security protocols are ready for deployment," he reported. "We've incorporated every attempt at system penetration into newer, stronger defenses." Looking out over the city he'd conquered twice, first through financial genius, then by defeating internal betrayal, Andres Gates reflected on the decade's transformations. The family that had tried to destroy him had instead provided the foundation for unprecedented success. Louise's social empire had crumbled into prison-issued beige, her designer wardrobe replaced by regulation uniforms. Her last appeal had painted her as a victim of patriarchal financial control, but the evidence of her 3-year premeditation destroyed any sympathy. "She still claims it was about independence," Preston noted, reading from recent prison reports. "Says she needed her own identity. The psychiatrists say she's rewriting history to cast herself as a feminist hero rather than admit to simple greed." Jake's maximum security existence offered even less comfort. His sophisticated charm had devolved into bitter rants about missed opportunities. The man who once manipulated wealthy families now spent his days in a concrete box, His only audience board guards who'd heard every con man's story before. His former charity contacts now run background checks on every new board member, Cecilia mentioned. The Gates protocol includes specific parameters for identifying his pattern of social infiltration. Terry's path had been different, but no less defined by her choices. After expulsion from her private school, she'd found the doors to other elite institutions firmly closed. The Ethics Committee's evidence of her willing participation in defrauding classmates' families had created an indelible record. She tried launching a social media campaign last year, Preston reported, claimed she was a naive teenager manipulated by adults. The evidence of her enthusiastic participation killed that narrative quickly. The morning sun climbed higher over Manhattan as Andres reviewed the empire he'd rebuilt on the ashes of betrayal. The Gates Protocol had transformed industry standards for internal security. The Foundation's research protected other families from similar schemes. Even the pain of betrayal had been converted into practical wisdom. Gilbert presented the latest financial summaries. The fund's growth continues to exceed market averages. Your reputation for identifying and eliminating threats has actually attracted more institutional investors. The legal department has expanded again, Julius added. Top graduates compete for positions, wanting to learn how we transformed a potential catastrophe into an industry-changing triumph. Cecilia organized the morning's documents with practiced efficiency. Their marriage, built on shared strength and proven loyalty, demonstrated daily how true partnership differed from Louise's manipulative exploitation. The annual Fraud Prevention Symposium is oversubscribed, she noted. We've had to add satellite locations to handle international demand. Preston's security team had grown into a global operation, training other organizations to recognize and prevent internal threats. The lessons learned from Louise's betrayal and Jake's manipulation had created new protocols for protecting family businesses. The psychological profiles are particularly valuable, he explained. We can now identify potential threats through behavioral patterns before they fully develop. The afternoon brought a series of video conferences with international operations. The Gates financial empire now spanned continents, each division built on the principles of earned trust and verified loyalty that had emerged from betrayal. Louise's prison term would end eventually, but she would emerge into a world where her name was synonymous with familial fraud. Her social connections had transformed into prosecution witnesses, her carefully cultivated reputation destroyed by evidence of long-term deception. Jake faced another decade in maximum security, his sophisticated schemes reduced to textbook examples of failed manipulation. The man who once moved smoothly through society's highest circles now shuffled through prison corridors, just another aging con man who reached too far. Terry's monthly letters continued to arrive, each returned unopened. Some choices created permanent endings. Some betrayals marked irreversible changes. The trust fund that might have been her inheritance now supported research, preventing others from following her path. As evening settled over Manhattan, Andres Gates reviewed the decade's transformations. The betrayal that might have destroyed his empire had instead forced evolution, creating stronger systems and clearer principles. The lights of the city sparkled below, each one representing countless ambitions and potential betrayals. But here, in this office high above the endless competition, Andres Gates had proven that true strength came from principle rather than emotion, from earned loyalty rather than assumed trust. Every year, the Gates Foundation funded new research into preventing financial fraud. Every quarter, the Gates Protocol protected more organizations from internal threats. Every day, the lessons of betrayal were transformed into practical wisdom. The markets never slept, opportunities emerging in the darkness of lesser men's failures. But the core truths remained constant. Trust required vigilance, family meant loyalty, and some betrayals created endings that no amount of time could change. Andres Gates turned back to his screens, where global markets moved in endless patterns of risk and reward. He'd built his first fortune through strategic brilliance, preserved it through ruthless determination, and rebuilt it stronger through unwavering principle. The night deepened over Manhattan, but in his office high above the city's endless ambitions, Andres Gates continued his relentless pursuit of excellence. The past was settled, its lessons transformed into strength. The future belonged to those who understood that true success came not from trust freely given, but from loyalty rightfully earned. Some said he was ruthless, destroying those who betrayed him without mercy. They never understood that his strength came from seeing reality clearly, without emotional illusion. The family that tried to destroy him had instead provided the foundation for his greatest triumph, an empire built not on blood ties, but on proven loyalty and earned trust. The Gates' legacy would endure, not through inheritance, but through the transformation of betrayal into wisdom. Each year, new scholars studied the case that changed financial security. Each quarter, new institutions adopted the protocols born from betrayal. Each day, the empire grew stronger, built on the unchanging truth that trust must be earned, loyalty must be proven, and weakness must be eliminated without hesitation. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.